Hello, visionary, and welcome to your free human design workshop on the Splenic Inner Authority. So, we are talking about the spleen today, and this really came about because of a lot of people that have this inner authority who, really were questioning and wondering how to use the spleen, use the inner authority, how to operate correctly. And it can be kind of an intense inner authority. And so this is what the request was to sort of do a workshop that kind of goes through the experiences people have had, that discusses people's experiences, and kind of helps people soothe and understand and navigate the inner authority. So if you're here live, just give me a hello. Let me know you're here. That would be great, just so I can make sure that you guys can hear everything and see everything okay. And we will get started. So can you guys all hear everything okay? I just like to get some type of confirmation so I'm not just randomly talking. All right, so welcome everyone. I do not see any confirmation at all. Hey, Katarina, hello. Yay, thank you. I so appreciate that. Thank you so much for letting me know that you're here. Yay. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Amber. Thank you. Okay. So to dive into the intel for today, what we're talking about is this incredible information that the spleen provides and the splenic inner authority. So when we're talking about the centers, there's a little bit of a differentiation when we're talking about a center that is also an inner authority. And the center is going to operate differently depending also on your type. So the splenic inner authority is usually going to be a projector or a manifester. Now, there are some cases and some softwares where certain generators that are, the spleen is inspired by, the sacral is inspired by the spleen. They're like splenic sacral generators, and that is not quite in the same way that it's going to operate as a splenic inner authority, but good to know how the spleen operates. Also, many of you will have friends, families, clients, loved ones who are splenic authority. So for those of you who are here live, let me know if you are splenic inner authority if you're here, and also let me know if you're a projector or a manifester. Also, if you're here and you have someone in your immediate family, someone you love that's a splenic authority, go ahead and put that in the comments below. If you're listening, whenever you're listening to this video, let us know. Let us know if you're splenic inner authority or you have someone close to you that you love is, because it helps when you're actually obviously either utilizing it or you are watching it, right? And so I myself am a splenic projector. Trista, awesome. We've got a 4/6 splenic projector, and Amber is, yes, splenic sacral generator, which is basically the 5734, that connecting from the spleen to the sacral. So I want to share a little bit about this journey and how this workshop came to be. Really, it was inspired by my beautiful other splenic projector. Oh, yay, she's here, Amy. Amy! And she's like, we need to have a splenic workshop. And what the inspiration came from was just that every splenic inner authority really operates a little bit differently. So, oh, this is great. We've got quite a few splenics. Soli, Nina, Alexandra, Ellen, awesome. Jocelyn, wow, really cool. Very cool. Very exciting, huh? And so what I found is that when I first started with human design, was really interesting is a lot of my BFFs and my inner circles of friends were all MGs. And I was like, this is interesting. I'm really attracted to MGs. And obviously I was conditioned to believe I was an MG, so that kind of makes sense. And then as I started going layer by layer and a little bit deeper into human design, I started attracting and being drawn, and as we live and wait for the recognition, started being recognized and recognizing other splenic projectors. And so in my group right now, my level 2, I have some really beautiful and amazing splenic projectors that are really inspiring me. And Amy is the one who's brought it up. And so we're going to actually create a part 2 of their story. So you can actually hear from them and their own words about their experience. And here's why. Living as a splenic projector is very different for every type of splenic inner authority. It operates very differently for each person. And I'm not really sure why that is. I think there's a little bit more consistency with the emotional, although the waves are very different and emotions are very different, right? The sacral, there's a consistency there. It appears to me as I've been experimenting with this stuff. But when it comes to the spleen, everyone hears it very differently. Now, the spleen is associated with health, with fears, with intuition. And so also when you think about intuition, we all get our intuition very differently. And I think that's why it's a little bit harder to understand the spleen. And when I first heard I was a splenic projector, I really honestly had absolutely zero concept of what the spleen was. I was like, what spleen? Where's your spleen? Like, what does that even mean, right? You know where your heart is, you know your emotions, but like, what is a spleen? Like, where would you get that? So the spleen is not even associated with one particular organ like the other centers are. And it's not really part of the chakra system. So not something you're totally familiar with, right? So the splenic center in human design is part of the lymphatic system, which means that it's all over your body. And so it's kind of like having little tentacles all over your body, right? And so when you're talking about the lymphatic system, of course, it's going to be very, very different for every single person as they're integrating and feeling and kind of sensing into that. And so I've been, kind of reaching out to my beautiful splenic beings to hear a little bit about their stories too. And you guys will want to hear because they're all different. They each have a different way of experimenting with this and learning it. And so what I first heard with the spleen was that it's very subtle. And then my human design teacher said, no. For him, it's a gong. It's like really loud. It's this loud gong and he's got it and it's so clear and he gets it. And I'm like, whoa, it's neither of those things for me. But when I heard the lymphatic system and that it was all over my body, I started knowing where to sense it a little bit more. Now, remember, there are other centers that are very, very loud that you might have if you're splenic. So you might also have the willpower, which is a very loud center. You might also have a defined head or ajna, which is very, very loud. And so those can really take over and can operate without the spleen ever having its voice be heard. So first and foremost, you have to learn how to quiet the mind and also quiet the will. The willpower can be very, very loud. Those of you who have a defined will, you know what I mean, and that's me included. The will is like, you can do it, push through it. Particularly before I knew human design. That was my MO, how I operated. So to pull back, settle in, and really quiet those other aspects, that's really the first thing. And of course, once you do tap into the spleen, the intuitive voice of the spleen, you have to understand that even though you get intuitive hits on things, you're not designed to act on them. particularly if you're projector. Now, manifestors, this will be a little bit different. So if you're a manifestor spleen in the moment, you know, you're getting the spleens, yes, and you know it's time to inform, then you get the go ahead, right? You go ahead, you inform. And even if it's like an intuitive hit and you know it, then you can inform and you can move. So you can see the spleen operates very differently based on type. So as a projector, you can have intuitive hits up the wazoo, but you are not designed to act on them until you've thoroughly blood, sweat, and tears waited for the proper invitation or recognition, right? So that splenic authority is learning and sensing and feeling into like all of the things that are coming through it, right? And so for me, and it's funny because I was reading through Amy and Helena and Melissa, who are the 3 splenic projectors that are part of my little inner circle right now, doing my certifications with me, and they each wrote something completely different in how the spleen operates for them. And Amy was saying she gets like a click. And then she gets like a heaviness, right? And then Helena was telling me that she is getting like, she knows, she's getting like a yes. She knows it as like a yes, like a big yes, and she also knows when there's like a block. And the other thing she was saying is like she's getting the spleen when someone's talking to her, the tone, the resonance. So if someone's saying something and they're off tone, that's also kind of a projector thing. She's knowing that like what they're saying, the frequency is off, right? So it's very, very personal. How it operates for me is like almost no feeling at all. It's like no, and this was a huge point for me because I've done so much work on intuition. You guys know that I'm a spiritual practitioner, so there's a lot of kind of spiritual training that I've had. And so one of the biggest things that I had to retrain myself on is re-navigating what all of my spiritual teachings meant. And most of the people who are kind of drawn into our work, they have, you know, we have a lot of channels, spiritual practitioners and visionaries and all types of different spiritual ways of being and operating. But when you learn how to live your inner authority, you actually have to relearn everything you were taught in the spiritual world, and it actually puts things in the right perspective after, you know, once you learn it. But so when I used to get downloads, I still do. I get a ton of downloads. I'm connected in spiritually, but I used to feel the downloads, get a vision. So for example, in my 20s, I had a huge, massive vision on the pyramid of the moon when I was with a shaman, and it was to create this performance group. And so my will figured that that was what I needed to do, and I just went and pushed and made it happen. And I did make it happen, and I manifested it. It was extremely painful, and I was never recognized as the creator when it got big. So it was just kind of a really intense insight on being a projector. And so, but that's how I was taught how to manifest. You get a vision, you get a download. That download vision should guide you and direct you, right? And so I had to relearn all of that. And now I realize that the spiritual world is on a different dimension. From the way I experience it, the spiritual world is a different frequency than the aura mechanics. And that's what I like to say, the aura mechanic, how that operates. Ra Uru Hu, the founder of Human Design, he called it the mental plane, that it's a little bit different than the spiritual plane and the physical plane. He called it on the mental plane. So my sense of it though is like it's the auric, how we're literally, our physical, you know, vehicles are moving, creating business and creating through space. And so when you're talking about the spleen, it really is this kind of subtle, like, you know, the way I heard it was like a hummingbird subtlety. And mine is also no feeling at all kind of experience. Alexandra, wow. Okay, so that's exactly how it is for me. It just moves. It moves in business. It moves like if I'm missing something, I just don't think about it and I'm led there, directly in the house, like, oh, and I'll reach and like, oh, the spleen knew where it was. And emails and like whatever program whatever I'm doing, the spleen's already written the post and already completed it before I think. So I know the minute I think about something, it's getting in the way and it's disrupting the splenic force. And so also the other thing that happens to me with a no is a deep kind of I get a deep sort of resonance in my body, and I almost get like, a circle with a cross through it. So it's like a pushing against, and it's not like I see the circle. It's like in my body, it's like a cross. And so that's when I know that I'm getting like no, the splenic no. So the spleen is, the other thing that's very interesting about the spleen is that it's very comforting, and it has a sense of like what to fear and what not to fear, right? It's a very comforting, people with the splenic inner authority, there's a wellness, they feel like there's a wellness, right? And so they have a sense of wellness, and oftentimes the undefined spleen is very attracted to that, and they want to be around that sense. Also, you might notice that the fear gates are surround all of the fear gates. I mean, there are other fears, anxieties, and stuff in the chart, but the fear around the spleen is a very intense, can be a very intense operator of what you're afraid of, right? Whether you're afraid of the past or afraid of the future. It's different for the splenic inner authority, because even though they might have the fears, they actually have a consistency around those fears. So they have a consistency around which gates they have. And once you start operating as your splenic authority, you really understand what to be afraid of and what not to be afraid of. And oftentimes the undefined spleen is absorbing and amplifying those fears. And particularly those people who don't know anything about human design, what are they doing? They're running around, particularly right now, is absorbing and amplifying the fears on the planet, right? So think about how much fear is being pumped into the media right now, on social media, how much fear around the virus, and the undefined spleen doesn't know what to be afraid of. And so they're kind of afraid of it all. And they don't know when to, what's really going to get them sick and what's not. And when you have a defined spleen, you almost have this kind of sense of wellness around it. Like, I know what to be afraid of. I know that what to worry about, what not to worry about, right? And so it's a really interesting dynamic how the spleen and the undefined and the defined work and operate together as well. So I think one of the most important things to understand throughout learning the splenic inner authority is that this particular inner authority does not have specific experiences. So in other words, it's not as specific as the in the sacral. It's very different for each person. And so the experiment is first, of course, to learn how to use your type, and then also the experiences to make sure that the mind and the ego, those are the two that usually operate more powerfully when you're splenic, are not taking control of the ship, right? Undefined splenic center people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Well, I didn't say it. Amber did. There is a lot of fear right now, and you're seeing it, yeah, for sure. And you're seeing that kind of craziness amplified. But here there is wisdom in the undefined spleen, when someone is really aware that that is happening. Just like there's wisdom with the undefined center, right? There's the undefined emotional, the undefined sacral. There's wisdom in not having that center once you master it. And the wisdom is, you know, eventually you do have intuitive gifts for other people. Eventually you do have almost a medical intuition. I mean, there's a lot of things in the chart that show medical intuition. So it's not just this place, but that is, you know, all of the whiteness in our chart is our Achilles heel and our superpower. And so once the spleen isn't so, you know, pumped up with the fear, they're able to sort through it, then they can actually use it to use it as a superpower. But we don't see that a lot in the world right now when we're dealing with extreme fears that are happening. And I do think that things are going to kind of bubble up. I think there's going to be more and more fears of weird things happening. And so it is really important to kind of master this stuff. Once you do get that spleen, so for those of you who are still trying to figure it out, you know, how does the spleen operate and how do I live as a splenic manifestor or splenic projector? It is in the moment, 100% in the moment. So you know, you technically don't know things until you're there, until you're in the moment. And I think the biggest thing for me is like not taking on other people's stuff when you say no or yes for no reason. And the other thing we were talking about is that there's no, like Melissa was saying, there's no specific outcome. So she had 2 invitations and her spleen said no to both of them. And so she chose not to go, but there's no specific outcome as to why, you know, like there was no way to know, like, oh, it said no, but why did it say no, you know? And so, I mean, and that could be true, obviously, for other inner authorities. It's like, you don't get to know, the mind doesn't get to know. And it's kind of crazy making for the mind. If it's, you know, you're getting an invitation and it's like, yes, you know, it's that open door and it's time to go. But if you get a no, and for example, if somebody who you love, who's a dear friend, is wanting to do something with you or is asking something of you and the spleen is giving you a no, and it's very hard and painful to say no to that person, particularly, you know, the undefined solar that, you know, is avoiding the confrontation and doesn't like to say no. I think that's the hardest part about it, is that it's so subtle and it's so in the moment. So in the moment, it could be a yes or a no. And in the moment, you have to really honor that. And that is a very difficult, challenging thing to do. So that is really the exercise, is making sure that it's not being overpowered by the intensity of the mind. It's not being overpowered by the intensity of the will. And you're able to tease out where the spleen is. It's not in one particular organ, it's throughout the whole body. And it's a sensing mechanism. And it's intuitive. So the intuition does show up differently for each of us. It shows up completely differently. And so when I let my spleen move, there is absolutely no gong, no bells and whistles, not even like a fluttering, like hummingbird, nothing. It's just like almost like a robot, like it's just moving. And I've learned that that is how it operates for me. And the reason why this is important and the reason why I want to share this with you guys is because if you're waiting to hear something, you're waiting to hear a big gong, or you're waiting for like all of the like bells and whistles of the spleen, sometimes it's going to show up as nothing at all, but just a movement. And it's, again, you have to experiment for yourself. And that's the exciting thing about this journey, is that you don't want to take my information and be like, oh, you know, that's the truth. You don't want to take my information and completely follow it. It's about letting it absorb into yourself and experimenting in your own life so that you can really figure it out and let it guide and direct. the direction. And once you do, the experiment is amazing because you will be led to, you know, beautiful and sacred and safe, amazing directions that are specifically designed for you. You know, right now we're teaching the PHS, and the interesting thing, I mean, it's so fascinating, but you know, the more and more you unravel your inner authority and the simplicity of it, the more and more you'll find yourself living correctly and in the right environment and doing things correctly, just because you've learned like this basic tool, right? Which is why I love you too. So I'm going to add a part 2 with some videos from some splenic projectors. So if you have experiences with your spleen, let me know. I want to hear them from you. I want to hear what your experiences are, because the more we share and talk about the actual experiences, the more it's going to help those people when they just find out, I'm splenic, what do I do? And it does take a while to find that and decondition, as you all know. So, so be sure and reach out to me. Be sure and wait for a part 2 on this, because we are going to do more videos on it. I have no idea what my spleen is telling me as yet. Yeah, does anyone else relate to that? Is there anyone listening to this video who feels I don't know what my spleen says or what it's doing? Because I just want you to know that if you feel that way, I would say that I found out I was a splenic projector maybe for a full year before I really felt what my spleen was doing, particularly because I heard it was a big gong, and I'm like, whew, I'm not getting a gong. So like, that's why it's important to hear all the many ways that people are experiencing it. So if you're out there and you're listening to this and you've just found out you're splenic manifestor or projector, I just want you to know that you will find your spleen. Don't look at an anatomy chart. Just know that as you settle in and you begin to decondition and you begin to settle in to the truth of who you are, the spleen will make itself known to you how it's going to operate. And we know that it's in the now. We know that there's an intuition to it. And we know that it's going to move you into the correct environments for your own safety and survival. And that you definitely will know what's correct for you. Oh, defined ego, root, and head and ajna. Yeah, let's do that, Amy. Let's do that. That's really great. So the question is, will you speak more on how to quiet the defined ego, the root, or the ajna, and the head? And you know what's funny is, like, it's a combination of the defined centers as well as the mind of the open centers. So for example, I have a open root, and so, but it is very loud in my mind. The not self root is talking to me all the time to get stuff done, and it's putting a lot of pressure on me. Well, the defined roots are putting all the pressure on me. So that is a great question, and that is a perfect thing to discuss. I do want to give you guys a little bit of heads up on some of the things we have going on right now. Part 2 is going to come, and we'll discuss more on the splenic. We also have something brand new that we've never offered before. That if any of you are here and you want to go deeper into your chart, we have a brand new discounted human design reading. And this is going to be done by our level 4 practitioners. They are amazing, really amazing. They can give readings on so many different things, including BG5, so business readings, and they're just amazing. It's a brand new offering that we have. If you're interested, you can PM me. I will put the link for the discounted sessions after this video, but I'll put it in the description. but it is going to be, a lot of people have been asking us for readings, and we've just gotten so busy. And so we decided that this was a great way to provide our community some discounted readings. So a lot of people want to have, you know, they want their first introduction on human design, someone to read their chart for them. So the other thing is, if you are interested in doing in our done, like if you are interested in doing a DIY course, meaning the Human Design Basics, we now have a brand new membership site for the DIY basics of human design. So if you want to go from start A and go through the basics, we also have that as well. And so we're very excited to offer that. There is a link in the description for that as well. And basically it's once you, it'll say what is it for? The DIY human design basics, and there's a free 1-hour training that you can watch to learn if it's something that might interest you. We take people through this whole process, but some people can't show up live and be in our group calls, and they just want the materials and they want to do it on their own time. So those are a couple of the offerings we have available for you right now. We also have something on our Facebook group by Davidian. Giving a little shout out to Davidian's. He's doing a sneak peek for a few people. And so if you want to, and I got to tell you, and I know I might be a little bit biased about this, but I don't think I am, because I have a very discerning eye. This is an incredible journey. It's about, it's a 36-minute like visual feast for human design. So we've got a lot of really cool things going on that I wanted to share with you guys and tell you about, because it's been a while since I've been live in the group. And so I wanted to make sure that you guys were up on all of the amazing offerings that we have available for you. So discounted readings, you can do a DIY done at your own pace. And then also in the Facebook group, you can get a sneak peek of Davidian's new masterclass. And it's really, really stunningly beautiful and great, I have to say. It really, truly is. So with all of that said, we're going to wrap up for today, and we're going to do a part 2. So I will see you on part 2. If you have any notes you want to send me about your experience with your spleen and or questions, just please type them in the comment below. And I will make sure that whatever questions we get, we will do them in part 2. And you will hear from the other amazing splenic projectors that have really learned how to use their spleen. So if you guys are here live and you've liked this video, give it a little love. I'm a projector, so I really do appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for being here live. If you have any questions, I'll stay for a minute for questions or comments, and then we're going to wrap it up. The defined head and ajna are already rambling on before I even wake up in the morning. It's true. It's true. So there's a lot of it. You know, I would say that probably the most important thing that you can do if you're inspired by this information is to begin the process of deconditioning. And it's really deconditioning from the mind and learning how to turn the mind into a passenger. And even if you're defined head in ajna or undefined head in ajna, the mind has obviously a life of its own. It's talking all the time. And it really does need to kind of learn how to sit back, witness, watch the intelligence of the vehicle, and let the vehicle intelligence move on its own to what's correct for it. The link to the Facebook group. Yes, absolutely. We will do that right away. Miss B. Yeah, we will put the link to the Facebook group. Thank you for that. We absolutely will. If anyone is here and that has a quick access to the link and you want to put the link in the comments, that would be so awesome. If anybody is really quick. If we've got any quick spleens around here that has it. If not, I will do it as soon as the video's over. Okay? So it's called Spiritualized Entrepreneurs Awakening to Their Next Level. And but I will put the link right below in just 1 minute. So thank you guys all for being here. And spleens, I love you. Well, I love all of you. But Splenic Inner Authority, you will find your way. You will find your way. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful Friday. And I will see you guys in part 2.